Okay, at 6 o'clock, I'd like to call the March 16th, 2021 board meeting to order. This meeting of the Sugar Grove Village Board will be held as outlined in Public Act 101-0640, which waives the Open Meetings Act requirement that a physical quorum of elected officials be present to hold a public meeting in the event of a public health disaster declaration and a determination by the village president. Governor Pritzker issued a statewide disaster declaration on March 5th, 2021, and in response, President Shawn Michaels determined that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent at this time. With that said, Jen, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Allison, roll call, please.
Trustee Lindy?
Here.
Trustee Conan?
Here.
Trustee Montalto?
Here.
Trustee Walter?
Here.
Trustee Heron?
Here.
Trustee Cook?
Here.
President Michaels?
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. Thank you all for being here. Ted and I are both here at the Village Hall, and there are no public attendees. There's no public hearings, no appointments or presentations. Public comments on items scheduled for action. Allison, I believe you have one.
I do have one. It's not something that's on the agenda, so I can either read it now or I can read it at the end.
Go ahead and read it now.
Okay. It's from Melissa Gleason, and she writes, "Hello. We are newer to town and we're in love with the fact that there is a beautiful park really close. However, once we got to playing on it, it seems rather unsafe. The swings are okay, but the stairs and roundabout are just terrible and they are so rusted, and I'm worried that if one of my kids falls, they're going to get cut badly. It is certainly a very old playground, and I see that a lot of the other playgrounds in the city are really nice. I'm hoping that maybe somebody could take a look at this park and think about doing something with it. I appreciate the time." And the park is Strubler Park. And I did forward this to Karen Pritchard, and I let Ms. Gleason know that I had done that and that the park district is responsible for that park.
Okay. It's Strubler.
Thank you. From out of town.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Is there any public that would like to address the board that are on the call? 3 people in attendance. Is there feedback coming from the boardroom? Maybe it's the podium. Okay. Any public that would like to address the board? Going once, going twice, close that portion. Okay. May I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? Tonight's consent agenda, we have approval of the minutes, approval of the vouchers, treasurer's report, proclamation for Fix a Leak Week, resolution approving access agreement, resolution to purchase replacement public works truck, resolution to purchase a public works hearing loss prevention equipment.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Trustee Cook seconded it. Any requests for remove an item? Hearing none. Allison, roll call, please.
Trustee Montalto?
Aye.
Trustee Cook?
Aye.
Trustee Lindy?
Aye.
Trustee Conan?
Aye.
Trustee Walter?
Aye.
Trustee Heron?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries. Thank you. Move on to discussion items under budget workshop. Matt, turn the floor over to you.
Okay. So we're at the third and hopefully final budget workshop. At this one, it'll kind of be a review of what we discussed in the first two, as well as changes that were made, and then any other items that required additional discussion from the board or staff level. So we're going to go kind of fund by fund of the changes that were made. And the first is general fund. So right now we're going to talk about the current fiscal year that we're in, those projections. So there was a change in the utility tax for natural gas, increasing it by $12,500. Income tax revenues were reviewed, but there was no change necessary. We have used them since the most recent IML update, which was February of 21. In the IS services, there were two changes. Boardroom audio upgrades were removed since those were not approved. And then the website refresh was added to be completed for $4,850. Within other professional services, there was $9,000 added for the remainder of the year for the hiring of the lobbyist consultant. That's a hold number, as we discussed in the first budget workshop, to get additional prices. But that initial quote was for the remaining 3 months of the year, and then 1 month of next year. So it was just split up for those costs. Then in police, general equipment, the board approved the evidence storage cabinet and fuming chamber, so that was left in the projected budget, as well as purchasing of the ballistic shields for $3,900 that the board had a consensus on. Within the public works, the transfer was changed from $100,000 to $50,000 to the capital fund, but then that was for the painting of the public works building. But then the interfund transfer to the capital infrastructure fund was increased from $300,000 to $350,000. So total transfer was remaining the same, just where it was going was changed.
Okay. Matt, did we get additional quotes for other professional services?
For the lobbyist?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe Brent will speak on that.
Yeah, we sent out, reached out to 3 lobbyists asking for essentially, proposals and qualifications. So far, we've only heard back from 1. So we've followed up with the other 2 and are still waiting for a response.
Okay. And do you think we'll need that service still this year after?
I would say I would say I'm slightly above 50-50, saying it's something that the board would want to put serious consideration into. In addition to the Park and 47 traffic signal that was previously discussed, we have other projects hopefully coming up soon. One that's mentioned in my staff report, as well as potentially others, the Prairie Grove Commons project south of Walgreens that will require access to 47. So I can't say 100% at this point that I would be expecting us to need a lobbyist, but I think it's a reasonable enough likelihood that continuing to keep some money in the budget does make sense, I believe.
Would it be best to move it in the next budget year as opposed to this, since the legislature meeting, and we did have a positive meeting?
Yeah, I think either way is okay because, I don't know if we want to go too far right now, but what we would traditionally do is that, once we get final numbers for this year, we would, in the years that we've been able to transfer funds out, in particular to the road fund in the past, we can adjust that transfer where we end up essentially assuming we're going to have a surplus at the end of this year. I think, absent transfers we will, but with the transfers, we can adjust the amount that we transfer to essentially get this year a very minimal surplus at the end, somewhere between, $0 and $10,000. So I think whether we, if we leave it in this year's projected, but we don't spend it, it'll get adjusted at the end anyway. But I also recognize that, since we already are in mid-March, the likelihood of us doing it still this fiscal year is probably pretty low at this point. We're still waiting for feedback from that meeting we did have with our representatives on that project.
Yeah, just since we have a surplus for next year, 2021, 2022, I'd move it into that budget year. That way we're not scrambling to spend it this year.
Yeah, like I say, if that's what the board would like us to do, I think it's perfectly fine. And Matt, I'm assuming you don't see it any differently?
No, I do not. If that's what the board consensus to move it just out of this year into next year, we can go forward with that and just shift the years.
I'm not quite sure it matters. I just don't. I mean, to me, it seems like you're just kind of handcuffing us for April. I would say, seeing this goes through April, and if the board decides to make a decision, whether it be at an April 6th meeting because things change, or subsequently the following meeting, you would have at least money in there to do it. And if it's not spent, it's just going to end up as a part of our surplus anyway. I guess I'm just losing sight of what the rationale is.
Trying to get it in the correct year. Usually if the lobbyist has to do some meetings, they would do meetings in April, since it's late in the season or late in the month. And we wouldn't receive a bill until May or June. So by the time we get the invoice, it'll be in the next fiscal year. So I'm just saying, let's put the money in next fiscal year so that when the expense happens, it happens in the correct fiscal year.
No, I understand that. They don't bill on contract signing. So if you were to sign a contract in April, they don't actually bill you on that?
Well, I guess, and I'll look for an assist from Matt if I get this wrong. I think the proposal that we had received was asking for, in that case, I think 50% of it, if you will, up front. But I think regardless of when we get the invoice, Matt, modified accrual or just standard governmental accounting, if the services are provided in this fiscal year, even if we don't get the bill till next fiscal year, it would be charged to this fiscal year. That happens with quite a few of ours where, legal services, engineering, if the work takes place in April, even if we don't get the bill till say mid-late May and don't pay it till to a June board meeting, it still gets charged to this fiscal year because that's when the work took place. I think, my thought is I think it's, truly either way is fine because it will be what it will be, if you will. But right now, I think that it's probably slightly more likely that if we do engage a lobbyist, it probably will be next fiscal year by the time we get to that. But I can't say that with any certainty. Like you said, things can change pretty rapidly.
Yeah, right now we don't have a need for the service until we start talking to engineers and figure out what we need for that prairie grove, for whatever it's called, development.
Yeah, I mean, I think the potential scenario would be if all of a sudden we hear back tomorrow, say from our state level elected officials in regard to the Parkin 47 traffic signal, and I'm not expecting that we will, but if we heard back tomorrow and based on that, there was a discussion that a lobbyist could be of value, there's certainly a scenario where, it could take place in April, but at the same time, we may not hear back for several weeks, and even when we do hear back, the determination might be that a lobbyist is in need for that project. And as Sean mentioned, the Prairie Grove Commons project, same type of thing. Right now, we're waiting for updated engineering from the developer. Well, if we get that really quickly, and again, we don't have it yet, and we don't know that a lobbyist is in any way needed for that project. So it's just really hard to predict. But I think, at least from my perspective, it's somewhat 6 1, half dozen of the other, because I think by the time the audit is done in June, July, August, we'll adjust the end of year numbers based on what actually happens, not the projection either way.
Okay, Grant.
Mm-hmm.
The one lobbyist that you did hear back from, did they come in? Did they give you a price? How does that compare to Steve Anderson?
You know what? Actually, I haven't even looked at it to see if there's a price check. So I was waiting to hear from the other lobbyists. So okay. I don't know.
Okay.
Did we bring this number down? I'm sorry. There's so many sheets of paper in front of me. I thought the original number was 12,000.
So the original number was 12,600, but the contract ran through May 31st. So 1 month of that contract would be in next year's fiscal year budget. So that is in the budget right now. So it's partially in this one and partially in next one. So at a minimum, if we left it alone, I would need at least 1 month of the budget because we are obviously past March now. So I would need to leave 1 April. So half of this in April and then move the rest to next year's budget, or I could leave it. Again, not a huge dollar amount and not a huge difference based on the transfer that will be made, but at a minimum, if we wanted to leave something, it would be 1 month of a contract.
Okay. That makes sense. I mean, if at least you have money in there for April and then move the rest out like Sean suggested is probably appropriate. I don't know if anybody else has anything.
So Sean, if it sounds like that makes sense to you, and then I assume if no one else objects, that's what we'll do. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions regarding the general fund?
So we just went over just current fiscal year for the general fund. We'll go over quickly the 21-22 budget for general fund right now.
Okay, go ahead, man.
So the same change was made for natural gas to increase about $12,500 in revenues. Also, income tax was changed due to the notification that the census will not be certified until September now. We reduced that per capita number from 6 months anticipation to 3 months, which resulted in a reduction of $24,000. Same thing happened with use tax. Since that's a per capita, it was reduced to a 3 month based on there, and cannabis tax. So those were all per capitas that we did have some additional money in for new census numbers, but with that delay, we've decreased those months that we'll receive it. Again, other professional services will make that adjustment for the remaining amount. So that'll total the $12,600 total will happen, and we'll kind of leave those in for the budget. So with all those changes, the 2021 projected will be about $39,457. So that's going to change now that we made those slight adjustments. And then the 21-22 has a proposed of $27,781. Again, that will change. We'll go down a little bit because we moved some expenses to there. So based on unrestricted, question?
No, I just want to bring something up before you leave general fund. That's all. So I don't want to cut you off, but I don't want you to move on until we talk about one thing.
I'll just finish this last part and then we can get to questions. So the unrestricted general fund balance is essentially what you look at when you're looking at all funds that are not restricted for certain uses. Generally in general fund, all your tax levy items are going to be restricted. So at the end of fiscal year 2021, our projected unrestricted fund balance is $1,954,000. And then if you're looking at our budgeted surplus of the 27, obviously those are going to slightly change, but overall fund balance will not, because you're just shifting the same amount of money. We have an unrestricted anticipated fund balance at $1,981,000. So this anticipated fund balance is going to be $580,000 above the 25% fund balance reserve policy, which is 25% of operating expenses.
So basically, the general fund reserve is 33%.
Right. Okay. Yeah, which is in the financials too.
Yeah, Jen, did you have a question?
So I know I mentioned this last board meeting. Thank you, Sean. I just wanted to bring back to the board the facade program, where we were taking that $350,000, as I recall, and moving it over to streets and sidewalks. And the concept being this is the time to discuss whether the board would agree to earmarking $50,000 of that for the facade program. That obviously needs to be crafted and would have to come back in front of the board. But I think it would be a nice opportunity right now to earmark those dollars, and then we can craft it. If they don't get used, obviously they don't get used. But the hope is that, there's people out there that take us up on this, and we'll have to promote it. But I was hopeful that the board would back that concept so that we can earmark those dollars. No one wants to support the facade, moving $50,000 into this.
I would like to see details on the facade program before we allocate any money. I think that was sort of the challenge last meeting, was to come up with what the facade grant would consist of, so we would know how we're spending the money.
I support having something like this done in the future, the facade program. I think it's probably a great idea for beautifying the community. But, so I agree with Jen on that, but I agree with Sean that I don't think we have all our ducks in a row yet. I think maybe we should put some questionnaires or something out to some of the businesses to see if they actually, after this year of COVID, a lot of them are hurting financially, and the last thing they might want to do is spend more money on the business. So this might be something we may end up doing in the future versus right now. So it might be a little early to put funds on the side for it, but that's kind of where I'm sitting. I'm kind of on the fence with it.
I like the idea of our facades in some of the areas being improved, but I'm in a neighborhood that really needs its roads redone, and we don't have enough money to do that necessarily now. And so I can see my neighbors saying, well, the village is paying for them to put, thin stone on the front of their store, but I'm still driving in a crappy road. So I don't know if I'm willing to take money out of the roads quite yet. I mean, I like the idea, but kind of prioritize a little bit.
If I can interject, Matt.
I don't look at it. I'm sorry. I don't look at it as almost like a giveaway. I think the way I see it is when you promote businesses and you are a community that helps back those businesses, at the end of the day, we're trying to attract more development into this community to create more property tax revenue, more sales tax revenue. We can get more residents, hopefully, and increase income tax. Part of that is having businesses that you also want to pair up next to. And if you let the one part of our town get neglected and don't have a program like this to help them, then, you're not going to attract additional business. They're going to think that we're kind of a dilapidated town. So I look at it as we're helping them in the older part of town for a business that wants to, spend some money, but it's also about trying to get people attracted to our community who want to build here. And that's kind of a unique thing if we have a program like this. If we don't, it's just you can't put everything into roads. I would love to, and we know that that's a huge expense, but we're a whole community and we have to look at everything that we're doing. And that's part of it. We're looking for development to come here. And so maintaining and helping update some older part of town, I think is part of the process.
I guess I wouldn't have a problem with it if we could get an idea on cost. And is $50,000 reasonable, or do we need to look at it at a lower amount, based off of who would be interested and what are the potential things they would be looking at improving?
Yeah, I'm wondering, can we put together something to try and figure out either a survey to some of those businesses? Can we contact them, or can we get? I'm thinking in some of the housing, some of the neighborhoods. Now, if a new house comes in, we have certain requirements. Is there something that maybe we could, I don't know, stone, or is there a aesthetic aspect that we would look for, or that we would, I don't know, want to go for when we're talking about helping them? Like a 50-50 program that we're talking about stone on the bottom and new siding, or what, and I'm spitballing here, but I like the idea, and I do think that there's a noticeable difference when you go around town. And if I had a business and someone was offering this, I think I would try to take advantage of it if I could, because I think it's a good idea. But yeah, how do we get more details for this?
Just a couple of comments, if I may. One, I don't think it's necessarily needs to be a facade program, if you will, versus a road program. And Matt, if I'm understanding correctly, while the plan transfer to the roads is what was mentioned, what you just finished your presentation on, if I understand, is that there is a anticipated fund balance in the general fund of $580,000 above the reserve requirement, and which doesn't mean you have to rush out and spend that on anything. But, it would be, I believe it'd be perfectly reasonable if the board felt from a policy perspective it was to transfer additional funds out of the general fund this year, which likely would result in this year running at a deficit, but that's okay. That's, how you get the money out of there in most cases. But that, I believe up to, 580,000 could be allocated to some other use outside the general fund and still maintain the 25% reserve requirement under the current policies. So I don't think it's necessarily, like I say, it doesn't have to be the plan transfer. It could be part of these funds for a facade program or any other, initiative the board may desire. Is that accurate, Matt?
That's correct, yes.
Well, we could even have a deficit next budget year, so I don't see the need to do it this year, but run a deficit next year if we get the details worked out and fund facade program. So I don't think there's any need to change the budget this year, but going forward, once we see the details, it can be brought back to the board and we can reallocate the budget.
And I guess one other thing we haven't discussed, in the older section of town, most of the businesses are rental property. So if we're talking about a facade program, who would be responsible for that? Would it be the building owner or would it be the renters, the businesses that are renting? And, do we approach the owner? Like anything with a strip mall, like where Genoa's Pizza is, and the insurance and, the dentist and all that stuff. If we want to do a facade in that building, it's owned by one owner, not all the businesses. And you're not going to do each facade differently. I think you'd have to get the owner to buy in. So, that's why I'm a little concerned we don't have all our ducks in a row just yet.
And we have allowed different signage in the old part of town versus the rest of the part of town because of the age. So we have made exceptions. Brian, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, real quick. I certainly like the idea. I would support it here in the future. Do you have to have all your ducks in a row to at least earmark something? Because is there anything else in our budget for next year that isn't fully vetted, like something like this facade program? Yes, there's still more kinks to be worked out, ideas and all that, but is everything fully vetted? Like, why is this one? Why can't we earmark this one?
I'd say because we don't have any of the details as of now. Most of the line items have details and staff have good projections. So I see no problem in the next fiscal year to come back and revisit this.
So let me just understand. So you would, if we got our ducks in a row in May, the idea is that we just run the year at a deficit instead of use some of the surplus that was in this year and earmark some of that surplus to go toward this facade program or whatever else. The idea is to run a deficit instead. I just want to understand because I don't want a whole, and I understand what you're saying, Sean, that there are definitely things that need to be worked out. I just would hate for us to then not make a decision like this and then it be another 12 months.
Well, if you're asking for $50,000, there's already a surplus budget for next year at $27,781. So we could use that up, and that's if everything gets used. Then we would be looking at a $23,000 deficit, which is minor, and usually we'll see greater revenue than what we anticipate. So I think there's ample opportunity in the next fiscal year to fund that facade program if we get the ordinance passed.
Okay. Any more discussion on any other general fund items? Okay. General Capital Projects Fund. The only two changes in each of those fiscal years for this year and next year was that shift from the 50,000 for the painting of the PW building, so that those were decreased since it was only 50 instead of 100,000. TIF 1, we did have to increase the projections. We did have the redevelopment agreement with MetroNet. That was an unknown expense on when they would complete and get approval for the actual work that was completed. They did get that done, and we are paying out that redevelopment agreement with MetroNet, which is $59,562 was the max cost. General infrastructure. So fiscal year 2021, the current year, we did increase by the 50,000, which was the additional for the road and sidewalk program. And then there was an increase, which was 119,000. We received the quickest invoice from the state of Illinois that I've ever seen for Bliss and 47. So we did receive the first invoice for that. We had it budgeted for next year, so it was just a shift from next year to this year. But we did have a remaining 98,000 in next year's budget, which is the remaining village portion. So those two were 2021 projections and 21-22 budget items.
Okay.
Water and sewer fund. The only change was the additional transfer from the fund into the infrastructure fund of the 300,000 that was discussed at the last meeting. So with those changes, we're still projecting a 482,998 surplus for current fiscal year. And next fiscal year has a budgeted surplus of 78,000. So in the unrestricted waterworks fund balance is projected to be at 1.144 million at the end of the current fiscal year. And with the budgeted surplus for the next year, we're anticipating to end at 1,222,000. So that anticipated fund balance would be 177,000 above the 25% fund balance reserve policy for the water fund. Any questions on water fund items? All right, water and sewer. The only changes were the additional increase this year for 300,000 from the surplus transfer, and then the addition of the 50,000 for the half of the PW water building painting.
Have we gotten better estimates on that water, the painting of the public works facility?
Tony or Brad?
We have not put that out to bid yet.
All right. Any questions on anything that we've covered so far? The last item is just a discussion item. And so this was discussed at workshop number 2. That was discussed to add engineering into fiscal year 21-22's budget for potential anticipation of construction in 22-23 once the pavement analysis report is completed. So to go over that, the infrastructure fund is projected at the 2,572,000 fund balance at the end of 2021. There are restricted monies that are in that fund balance. Majority is MFT monies that we received from the one-time capital Rebuild Illinois grant bill that they passed of 395,000 through the end of the next fiscal year. There will be 2 more payments. That's a total of 6 payments. And that total is going to be about 592,000 in total that we'll receive by the end of 22-23 if they stay on track. So we can go over, if you go to the next page, it kind of breaks this down into hopefully a more readable format, which is just kind of a spreadsheet. So showing the ending fund balance of the 2,000,005 is that top number. The anticipated activity is just what we have as the budget for the next fiscal year. It's anticipating a 556,000 surplus. Dedicated funds, there is $30,000 in there from the landings development that we still have for the utility burial fee across 47. And then you'll see the 2 total payments for each fiscal year that we're receiving from the rebuild money. We'll receive one more total payment for that same amount in 22-23. So at the end of next fiscal year, we're anticipating a unrestricted fund balance of $2,704,000. And that's unrestricted, so that's monies that are not MFT that we can use for infrastructure projects. So future projects that staff has come up with, which kind of covers the entire unrestricted fund balance, there's right now in 25-26, which is just an estimate, we have no further information, but is the replacement of Phase Lane Bridge out in Dugan Woods. The $275,000 is just a phase one estimate. The $2 million is also an estimate on the construction side, but that's also just the 20% estimate of how much the bridge is going to cost. We're unsure of how much that is. In the current fiscal year budget, we do have bridge evaluations to be completed from EEI. So we should hopefully have more information on that. And then the last project is Park and 47 traffic signal with an anticipated cost of $650,000. So adding those together based on the unrestricted fund balance, we're obviously going into a negative fund balance, which we wouldn't do, but those are based on those two projects and estimated costs.
Would you anticipate construction being the same year that we do the phase one engineering?
No, we're unsure. We don't have much information. This was the dates we were given was 5 years. We're not sure on more information than that. So it may be split in 2 years, but the costs, I guess, it won't really change as far as the cost in the fiscal years. It's just earmarking those future potential projects that are going to come.
Tony, did you have an estimate for engineering that we should put in for next year?
If we do one of the subdivisions that we looked at this fall, those were 1.1 million. If we look at Windsor Point, that would be 1.6. So we estimate 150,000 to 200,000 engineering if we're interested in looking at something to that magnitude.
And you're anticipating the payment evaluation program to come back with that recommendation?
Correct. The kickoff meeting for the pavement management program is this Thursday. So it's moving forward.
So you're suggesting we put $150,000 into engineering so we can move these projects forward in 2022, 2023. So I would support that.
Yes.
Is that what he's saying? That's what you're saying. You're saying earmark $150,000 for engineering?
Correct. So that we could move ahead next year for the road program.
So doesn't it, and this is okay. I'm like, what fund is this? Capital, okay. Fund 35?
Yeah, this would be Fund 35, and that is what we were just talking about as far as those future projects. So if those projects, I guess, if we're looking at the 150,000, which would be the 1.1 million, you're going to be using of that 2.7, you're going to ultimately coming to 1.25 million that you're going to be using if that were to go forward of the fund balance, still with the unknown of the Phase Lane Bridge and Park and 47. So if we did that and move forward with the engineering for next year, that project would be in total $1.2 million of the 2.7 that we're anticipating.
Yeah, I think the concern that some of us on staff has is Matt outlined that, based on what we've been told by EEI and their work with the consultant that does the bridge inspections, they seem very confident, while we may not know the exact year, that Phase Lane Bridge is going to have to be replaced. And so our concern is that this fund does not have a dedicated revenue source that, to go toward that. This has been a built-up balance over many years, and so our concern is just that if we don't, have some kind of funding in there, and if Phase Lane Bridge does have to be replaced, where do we get the money for it? where do we get the local match? And if for some reason we're not able to get any type of grant, what do we do? And because that's the only way into the back of that subdivision. So that's, I guess that would be the word of caution. We do think that we'll know more, after the bridge inspection that takes place this year, to be in a better position to understand the timing of the replacement and the cost. But right now, based on what we've heard today, we are very concerned that it's our belief that it's going to have to be replaced somewhere in the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 year, time frame. And, the revenues that come into this other than, MFT and other funds, have essentially been, dedicated, I think, Matt, what do we get on an annual basis that you would argue, I could say is quote unrestricted? I don't think there's much that goes in there.
No, there isn't a bunch over. Non-home rule sales tax above the bond would be the only revenue. There's some rental going into there, but a majority is based on also home permits. So there's a capital fee that's going, a road impact fee that goes into there. So not a whole lot of dedicated revenues to amount to the millions outside of using the current fund balance. There's no dedicated monies going into that.
But, I think I brought up earlier about her road. So, I think we need to plan for the Phase Lane bridge replacement, but to say we're going to put all the other projects on hold until this is paid for, we have enough money, I think is short-sighted. We have to maybe look at bonding or doing something that's a significant project where we have a number of neighborhoods that need roads replaced, and we have some money. This is the first time I've heard about this Phase Lane bridge replacement in all the years we've been budgeting. So I would say we need to continue to look at local roads and plan for the bridge replacement as we get more information. So should we put $150,000 into engineering for later in the year out of this fund?
Yes.
You can't hear.
Yeah, I would put the money in now for the engineering.
Can somebody tell me what the road program is for 20? Because I don't know why this sheet printed like this. I don't have all the numbers, but for the budget year of 2021, 2022.
Yes. So she has that up on the screen. That's the 586,000.
Okay, that is the number. So of that 586,000, to do that, you're saying that we need 180 for engineering?
So what I believe what President Michaels is asking is, this is already a budgeted number, is he wants to add an additional 150,000 to add to the road program for 22-23. So this number right here is the 21-22 budget for the road program. He wants to add 150,000 to additional engineering to plan for the 22-23 construction for one of these projects. I believe, President Sean, if that's
correct.
Okay.
Because then what we're going to have is that pavement evaluation plan come in, let's say September, and we'll still have 4 months. We'll have 4 or 5 months come where we could do the engineering in anticipation of the next fiscal year. So I want to make sure that we can get a project going in 2022, 2023. How come we're just seeing this capital infrastructure, the Phase Lane bridge replacement now? How come it wasn't brought up during earlier budget discussions?
The bridge was brought to us through EEI in this last year, but it's not really brought up in the budget discussion because we're not budgeting on an annual basis for Phase Lane. We have the fund balance. That's what was being presented. But if it's something that we're going to use some of the fund balance, we will have to bring through a budgeted number to transfer for the projected future costs. that's why it hasn't been part of the budget discussion, just because it's not a budgeted annual expense. It's a long-term future that we had fund reserve balance. If that's something that needs to change based on using money for future road program money, then we can do that just like we are doing in the water fund for future infrastructure.
Any objections to putting that $150,000 into engineering? Okay. Let's do that. Let's put that in.
Okay. As far as budget workshop and memo goes, that was the end of the presentation and the third budget workshop, unless there are more questions to go over. That's all I have. And then at the next meeting, we'll be presented with the ordinance and then all of the accompanying fee resolutions, whether they're staying the same or changing. And then the public hearing is also on the 6th.
Okay. All right. Staff reports. Any questions? Walter? You have anything to report?
I'll just add a couple things. In the report that was distributed, I indicated that, we've got, some activity going on with Prairie Grove Commons and, so that, we remain hopeful that that's going to happen relatively soon. But something else I want to bring to your attention is, we've had, some very recent contact with the new owner of Lot 17 in Sugar Grove Center. That's where the inline building, the missing part of the inline building is located. And that owner intends to build a retail building there as soon as they can. And the ownership at Landings Office Park indicated to me this week that they are actively marketing the property for medical uses, and they have a fair amount of interest. So they remain hopeful that we may see a new building or two out there very soon. And then lastly, out of the blue, we were contacted by someone interested in one of the last remaining vacant lots on Heartland Drive for an industrial building. No particulars given what the user is, but we're hopeful that something will happen on that lot. And it's the lot immediately south of Connor Plumbing. So, so I'd say, at the moment, there might be a lot of things happening this summer or late fall.
Any questions? Yeah.
Can you give us, the board and residents, any update on the comp plan? As I know we saw a timeline, but maybe you have updated information.
The only update I can give is there's no update to give. CMAP has not selected a consultant yet, and so we're a little behind schedule.
Okay. Thanks, Walter.
Any other questions? Tony?
Yes, as I mentioned before, we do have the kickoff meeting this Thursday for the pavement management program with CMAP. I do want to also point out that the Kane County Road Improvement Impact Fee Advisory Committee is meeting. They review the county impact fees every, I believe, 5 years. I did put a link in my staff report if anybody would like to follow up with that. And there will be a public hearing scheduled for follow-up in June of this year. Just wanted to get that information out there. We're making progress on well 10. We had passed our samples, so by the end of the week, we anticipate that project should be completed. And that's all I have at this time.
Has the additional salt been ordered?
We've ordered 80% at this point, which is our minimum required to meet our contractual obligations, and it has been delivered.
And what was the cost of that?
I think we're at approximately $150,000.
Okay, well, that's good information, but we just went through the budget. That'll give us a surplus of about $70,000 in that line item.
Sorry, yeah, that was actually just recently done. I talked with Brad because they're in the contract. The supplier has a certain amount of days for delivery, and if they don't, you get a premium. I guess it's a discount for how many days they're past their due date. I did. That was the first time I heard of the number because I just talked to Brad. I think it was yesterday about that. So that's why it was below the budget, is because of them delaying the delivery based on the dates that they told us.
Well, can you bring back a recommendation what we do with that $70 plus or minus at the next meeting?
If I
Probably
can,
put in a job program.
I say, Tony, are you saying that you're done ordering for the year, that 80% is all we need and that our stockpiles will be full? Or are you saying you've ordered and received 80%? Are we still going to order the remaining 20 or actually 40 if we went up to the maximum we could do? What's your expectation for the rest of the year?
We're currently calculating that discount because of the late delivery, and then we're going to evaluate whether we should order up to the 100% or not to complete the contract this year. We haven't quite got all that figured out by the way this happened.
Okay. Do you have an anticipation of when you'll say, I mean, obviously we don't necessarily know what the weather's going to do in the next few weeks, but, I mean, when do you expect to make that final call on whether you think that we want to order the additional 20 or potentially the additional 40?
Hopefully, we'll have that decision by the end of this month.
All right. Well, bring it back at the next meeting would be appreciated.
Okay.
Any questions for Tony?
Yeah. Tony, do you have how long the project on the list is going to take? I just had a few commuters ask me about that. Have you heard anything about that?
I'm sorry, Ted, could you repeat that?
The road list, citizens commuters asked me about that. Do you happen to know how long that project on the list is going to be going on?
The Bliss Road, the county project?
Yes. Yeah, I know it's not our project, but I was wondering if you had any insight.
I believe that's a couple months project. I do believe we have a link to that on the front page of our website because they're doing major work there. So I would say a couple months, and I can double check that link. It's on the front page of our website.
Thank you.
I think the email that we got said it's going to be 4 months.
Yeah, 4 months.
Correct. I just checked the link, and that's how it starts out. Bliss Road lanes closed for 4 months due to culvert improvements.
Okay. Any other questions for Tony? Brent?
Yeah, just a couple of quick. Walter talked about Prairie Gulf Commons. Just to add briefly to that we are, very actively engaged with the, potential developer for that. And if things go well, hopefully we'll have something before the board in just a couple of months. And then the other one, just I did send the letter off to Elburn in regards to the boundary agreement. I spoke with the administrator and I just emailed it to him, and he'll distribute it to the village president and trustees up there. So we talked about the discussion here in Sugar Grove, and he said that he would relay that on, and he speculated that the earliest we would potentially hear anything back would be sometime in April, but that sounded probably optimistic.
Any questions for Brent? Okay. Matt,
One question.
do you have anything? Oh, go ahead.
I just have a question for Brent on the Hanford Farm stockpile, the topsoil pile. I heard from residents that, well, I see what you have in your staff report, that, the broker is going to be coming in and setting up, but I heard that there's the current builder is removing dirt. Do you know when that he's going to start and finish? Do you have a timeline on that so that the residents have an idea as to, anticipated truck traffic through the neighborhood?
Yeah, we have an anticipated timeline because as you can certainly understand, for both the current users and the topsoil broker, this is very weather dependent. And, at this time of year, the weather can certainly be negative toward that. So the initial is by the end of next week is the initial time frame for that dirt to be hauled out. But certainly if weather prohibits that from happening, I would anticipate that also would delay the topsoil brokers, setup plan, and that itself already isn't 100% firm. So I think if the weather stays decent, it should be completed, that initial movement by, one of the builders out there should be done by the end of next week. But if, weather could change that schedule.
Okay. Thank you.
Matt, did you have anything to add?
Just a quick update. Obviously, everyone saw that the bill was passed. The estimates that have been sent out have not changed, but we are still waiting on actual guidelines from the Treasury on what it can be used on and basically more information. We have not received any notification or information on from the Treasury. We've got the hearsay of the bill on what it can be used for. But until the Treasury comes out with their guidelines, everyone's kind of in a holding pattern on what to do with it.
Okay. Any questions for Matt? Chief Rollins?
Sure. It's been a relatively quiet last couple of weeks. Operationally, we've been seeing our neighboring jurisdictions still being hit with vehicle burglaries and vehicle theft. We have been constantly been going through the neighborhoods on the overnight hours, and officers, they're finding doors, overhead garage doors that are open and trying to make contact with the residents to secure them, just to prevent any more thefts or burglaries to occur. Last week we had a theft out of unincorporated Elburn that came down 47, and two of our officers, unfortunately, weren't able to stop it, but they went eastbound onto 88 off of 47 and continued towards the city. So they're still out and about. We just encourage everyone to secure your car doors and your garages at the nighttime. Other than that, we've had plenty of opportunity the last couple of weeks to get working on some and completing some administrative tasks, but not to jinx us. It's been beneficial to have these off weeks. I'd be happy if there's any other questions.
I hate to always ask you this, but I'm looking on your board report. Do we have an update on the Nixle number?
We crested the 1,000 earlier last week. So I think
from last board meeting.
Yeah. Yep. Sorry. So right now we have 1,032 subscribers that have signed up so far. So, and a little over 100 since the last board meeting.
Are they able to sign on pretty easily, or are they having technical issues?
I believe so. We've been very fortunate, a number of people requiring any type of assistance. So this is all self-generated. Helped a couple people through the system, but most of the residents have been successful in signing in. So we're just over 4,200 contacts in the system, but 1,032 of them have signed up on their own.
That's excellent.
All right. Trustee reports. Jen?
Oh, I do not have an update today, so thank you.
Ted?
Nothing for me.
Sean here.
Nothing for me.
Ryan?
I just want to comment, Tony, I'm going to give you a ring. Talking about Phase Lane Bridge and bridges. I know it's way in the future, but I just wanted to understand how we go about that with bridges. I know we don't do a lot of them in the village, but hopefully that can add some different insight. Not professional insight, but some I have some relationships. So
Okay.
all right.
Rick?
Actually, nothing this time.
Good. I do.
Nothing at this time.
Okay. President's report. I don't have anything to report either. No airport report. No need to go to closed session. May I get a motion to adjourn?
I will make that motion.
We got first by Trustee Cook,
Second.
second by Trustee Montalto. Roll call, please, Allison.
Trustee Cook,
Aye.
Trustee Montalto,
Aye.
Trustee Heron,
Aye.
Trustee Lindy,
Aye.
Trustee Conan,
Aye.
Trustee Walter.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Thank you all. See you in 3 weeks.